Good evening and welcome to episode 29 of Down on the Corner, the flagship show of KINER'S.com. I'm your host, Mark Roseman. Tonight, once again, we promise to give you a great night of baseball talk. We have the distinct pleasure of being joined. Unfortunately, Clint Hurdle is not going to be able to join us tonight. He's still driving back from Gainesville. He had some unexpected, issues on the way, but he promised to join us down the road. So not a big deal. We have one of the best pitching minds in baseball with us. He made his Major League Baseball debut with the Mets on June 11th, 1981, just hours before the start of the 1981 Major League Baseball strike. In his brief tenure with the Mets in 1981, he had a 1-0 record. 3.65 ERA across 26 games. But more interestingly, he went 1-for-1 in his only at bat, making him the only Met in history to have a 100% winning percentage and a 1,000 batting average. So you can screw Shohei Ohtani. We got the real deal. He spent 9 years in the majors as a relief pitcher, appearing in 254 games. After his playing days, he became a pitching coach. As the Pirates pitching coach, he was credited with rejuvenating the careers of Francisco Liriano, Edison Volquez, Charlie Morton, J.A. Happ, and A.J. Burnett. It is a pleasure to welcome the pride of Deer Park, New York, Ray Searage, to the corner. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Siri doing that's weird. So interestingly enough, Ray, this show pays tribute to the great Ralph Kiner, probably one of the greatest post-game shows in the history of baseball. So right off the bat, I know that you were on Kiner's Corner. Can you relive those moments that you spent on that show and what it meant to you?
Now that I'm older, I could think back on it, and I was a rookie. And I was so green a cow wouldn't eat me. And I was learning so much. And then to be called into Kiner's Corner is like, oh my gosh, I was so nervous. And just to be in the presence of that man and for him to ask me questions. But the thing that was really beautiful about it, and that I remember distinctly about it, is that Ralph, Mr. Kiner, didn't give me any tough questions. I think he saw through my nerves and all that was going on. So he kept the questions simple and to the point. And it was really exciting to be on there, especially the first time I ever been in his studio in Kiner's Corner, when the lights are just beaming down on you. And here I am, this rookie looking at I'm going, what did I get myself into? I don't know if I can handle this. This is crazy. And it was very enjoyable. And I know my dad got a kick out of it when we left for home that night. How was it? I said, Dad, I don't even remember what I said or how I answered the questions. I was so nervous. It was just amazing, and I'll always remember him in kind thoughts.
It's also interesting because people don't realize with all the technology and the fact that, guys in the dugout, have tablets and can instantly look at their at-bats. Back in the day, in the 80s even, you guys didn't have that technology. So sometimes when you were going into Kiner's Corner, it was the only time you actually saw yourself on video from the actual game, like right after the game. Was that was that a big thing for you guys to actually sit back and say, oh, yeah, that was a pretty good curveball I threw right there?
Oh, yeah. And then there was one pitch that I went, whoa, oh gosh, he missed it. That's good. Like Seaver. Okay, I threw a fastball to Seaver when he was with the Reds, Tom Seaver. And he hit, I think, God, I can't remember the dimensions of center field at Shea Stadium. What was it?
410.
410? He hit a 409. Okay, and Mookie was there to catch it, and I'm like, thank God, because Ron Hodges came out to me and goes, "Hey, you treat this guy like a regular hitter, because he will sting you. He could swing the bat, so you just execute pitches where I put my glove." I said, "Okay, boss, I'm in your hands." And I fell behind, and I had to give him a fastball, and thank goodness he didn't hit it out of the ballpark, even though that wouldn't have been a bad thing for my legacy. Yeah, I gave up a home run to Tom Seaver, one of the best hitters in all of baseball.
So I also know, speaking of Tom Seaver, that the very first baseball game you attended was the Mets, and you saw Tom Seaver pitch.
Yes.
What were your recollections, going from Deer Park to Shea Stadium as a kid, and then later on as a pitcher towing that same rubber that Tom Seaver actually stood on?
Oh boy, it was mind-boggling, especially even when I was with the Dodgers and we went in to play the Mets too. I still had that special feeling about, being at the stadium and it, even though the stadium at Shea Stadium and then City Park they all changed and everything. It's just being there in New York where I started my major league career was was really awesome. There's favorite things that you think of as a player and as a coach that always in top five. And being there and towing that same rubber and then watching him pitch when I was a young kid and watching him drag that knee hit the dirt and then he drug his foot all the way through and still threw the crap out of the ball. I go, I want to pitch like him. And believe it or not, I started practicing doing that, dragging my leg and stuff like that, but it didn't last too long because he was, just one of the best of the best. And watching him do that, he was very special.
So I also remember, and hopefully I remember this correctly because it would be 2 weeks in a row that our guest idol was the same guy. Your idol growing up was Sandy Koufax, right?
Yes. Yes.
Why Sandy? The kid from Deer Park, Long Island. Why Sandy?
Well, I didn't know about the Mets at that point in time. Okay. I was just thinking baseball collectively. And it was the Dodgers were in the World Series when I was a younger kid, and that was on TV. And my dad was a baseball nut. And I'd watch him, and my dad would say, "Hey, watch Sandy Koufax's curveball." And then, then I watch his curveball. Whoa, man, that would, I'm a little kid. I don't know what's going on, but I'm watching him, and then once that transpired and that season was over and stuff, I started like I want to be like Sandy Koufax. Obviously, that changed after Sandy Koufax when I got older. I also pitched like John Matlack too because I was just so into baseball. But watching Sandy Koufax being that guy and believe it or not, Mark, like I forget what year it was, maybe 1 or 2 years down the road, I had a Sandy Koufax baseball card and I put it on my bicycle spokes. If I could go back in time right now and grab that and smack that kid right in the back of the head, give me that card. I'll give it to you when you get to a certain age. My
You and
goodness,
me,
man.
you and me
Yeah.
both, man.
What
Was
a
it
dummy.
was it the one the yellow bottom with the flag that said
Oh,
Dodgers?
heck
That's it.
yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's the
sir.
one. Yeah. So it's interesting. Because of the radio show and this show, you get greater insights to a lot of things that it's such a privilege. And this spring training, I got the opportunity to talk to Adrian Hauser, who pitched a really good game the other day today, and Max Kranick. And in spring training, the conversations with the two of them, and you're the perfect guy to speak to as a pitching coach. Now, these two guys were vying for roster spots, yet
Hmm.
they were experimenting with new grips in spring training and
Hmm.
throwing them in preseason games. And I asked them, you know, when you're competing for a job and you have stuff that works, why are you, changing grips and such? And what's the most important thing that you have to do when you're changing those grips? And both of them, their answer was that you need to be able to throw with conviction.
Yes.
And that kind of puzzled me. Like, how can you throw a new pitch that you're working
Hmm.
with conviction and confidence? Like, it's almost like, Henry Hill in the Music Man, think the music. What does that mean throwing a pitch with conviction?
Okay. So one of the things they didn't just like wake up on Monday and say, I'm going to hold this pitch differently and start throwing it on Tuesday. They've been working on it in the pen, and they must have had some good results in the pen and some feedback from the coach and from the catcher. And so they're saying, hey, this might give me an edge over the hitters now because now I've got a new pitch that they haven't seen. And if I could use it in certain situations where I won't get hurt on it, but I could utilize it and see how it works with a live hitter up there, this will really pay off dividends for me later on during the season, or when I get into a situation that I always got this pitch that they haven't seen yet. Maybe once through the lineup, they haven't seen it. Second time through the lineup, boom, I incorporate it. Now they're waiting for it the third time, yada, 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 that stuff. But they've been working on it on the side. So obviously they both feel confident. And you develop that conviction when you're on the side. You maybe the first time you throw it, you're ginger it, or you massage it a little bit, and then you go, what am I doing? And then the second time you throw it, boom, and it's good, and it gets you either a swing and a miss, a ground ball, weak contact, something like that. So these guys, nothing ventured, nothing gained. In order to get an edge, you got to try something. You can't just live in your little box all the time and expect that's going to carry you all the way through. Hitters are going to make adjustments. You've got to make adjustments. And this way, now if he has to go to plan B, he might have this different pitch in that plan, or maybe just filter it in A to see how it goes. And spring training is the perfect time to do it. And it's not like he's going to be throwing it. Let's say he's got a 50 pitch inning. He's not going to throw it 48 times or so. He's going to mix it in, especially in situations, and see what kind of results he gets.
Interesting.
That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's why, Roger Craig had such an impact on the staffs. He taught guys pitches that they never did, and they had success with it. So the Mets dropped their first 5 games before winning finally in dramatic fashion just a little while ago, giving them a 1-5 record, which is very interesting. Here in New York, with sports talk radio, social media, newspapers, the sky's falling. I get it. Listen, 1-5 is not a good look.
No.
But interestingly enough, your 2013 Pittsburgh Pirates that won the wild card before falling to the Cardinals in the NLDS, 1-5 to start the season.
Right.
As a pitching coach, as a player, you've traveled from city to city. Is there a difference in New York? Is it easier for a team in Pittsburgh or Kansas City or Milwaukee to start a season in 1-5 as opposed to New York?
Not really. 1-5 is 1-5, and the biggest thing is that, yes, the media is going to try to find answers to why we're 1-5 and even dig deeper, and find answers that aren't even really viable. It's just the way it is, and the main thing as a coach and as a player, because the players will feed off the coach. If he's starting to panic on 1-5, he goes, geez, what's going to happen when we get to the halfway point or something? And we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Stay with the process, stick with the plan, and then try to just, when the media comes, try to be as cordial as possible, because they're going to try to dig and throw little barbs at you to see if you'll bite on some things. I'm not saying all of them, please. I don't want this to become, Searage just bagged on the media. No, I'm not. There's some questions that certain people asked to try to see if they could get you fired up, and, to sell papers and to get people on their shows and stuff like that. As a player, in Pittsburgh, they did the same thing. In St. Louis, they did the same thing. The St. Louis papers. The biggest thing that I felt that I did, I was just trying to be honest and forthcoming to them, and just say, listen, this is what's happening. We're going to be all right. We're just going to take one game at a time, and we're going to work from there. We can't get to 5-5 in the next game. We're just going to go one game at a time, and then we'll find our rhythm, our sync, and we'll be okay.
And the other thing is, obviously, 1-5 to start a season, as opposed to if you went on like a 7-game winning streak and then you went 1-5. And Francisco Lindor said that, when they were 0-4, it looked worse because it's that, until, you start getting it a little closer. Yeah. Is there a difference between an 0-5, start at the beginning of the season as opposed to 0-5 in July or August?
I don't think so. I think the only difference is, in the beginning of the season, you got a chance to make it up. If you're at the All-Star break, you're like, all right, we really got to put our nose to the grindstone. We got to start playing some ball and try to eliminate whatever's happening on the negative side, you know. But I think because New York is a hub like LA, you know, those two are the main media hubs. You know, a lot of stuff is going to be said, and try to figure it out. But overall, you know, it's not much difference from 0-5 in the first 5 games, or you go on a losing streak 0-5 in the, you know, before the All-Star break.
Right.
So
That again, and that's why like social media drives me crazy. But interesting enough, getting back to that 2013 team, you had a 26-year-old Andrew McCutchen on that team and a 24-year-old Starling Marte. I know you're the pitching coach, but these are
yeah,
two guys that are known for their work ethic, all
yeah,
around, you know, great players as well as teammates. So much so that even at 35 years old, Starling Marte is, if the Mets are going to be successful, he's going to be a big part of it.
right.
But when pitching staffs see guys like that go about their work the way they do, are you able to, as a pitching coach, use, you know, certain players on the offensive side as messages for the pitching staff?
Oh, definitely. Did somebody tell you something? Did
No,
you find
no,
out some secret information or anything? Okay.
no.
Well, the biggest thing is that you know, everybody looks at everybody's work ethic, and sometimes you let the clubhouse take care of the clubhouse for the guys that are just, you know, just falling back a little bit. So you need to give them a kick in the butt. But with McCutchen and Marte, that never really materialized, because McCutchen is unbelievable. He is a true professional, quote unquote, and in capital letters on professional. His demeanor and the way he goes about his job is fantastic. It's just he has talent, but he had to work harder in order to bring that talent out to the forefront. I mean, when we saw him take BP for the first time, the ball came off his bat differently, but there were some things that he needed to work on, like how to handle the breaking ball, how to look for an off-speed pitch when you're behind, when you're ahead, when the pitcher is behind in the count. You're not going to get a 2-0 fastball in the major leagues. You know, there's going to be something different up there. And he really studied. He really looked at video. He really looked at himself, and that's why he's still playing to this day, because he's a consummate professional. Marte was more. Not that I'm saying McCutchen didn't have this, is Marte was more instinctive. He was just, when he was born to play baseball. That was it. That was it. God said, "You're a ball player. Move on. Next." You know, and that's the way he was. And when he went out there and played, he gave it 110%. He left it out there in the game. He was a man, or a young man, who played the game like he was in Little League. He loved to play. He loved the competition. And those two guys, when you see them uh, perform and then do their work after the game, we're talking about after the game. We're not talking about before the game where you do your weights and stuff. These guys worked their butts off after the game and did their work. So this way, tomorrow they'll be ready to go. It was tremendous, and the pitchers were in there and watching this, and then the team starts to come together. Then all of a sudden, you got position players and pitchers that are. It doesn't matter anymore. It's pirates, and we've got to do this to win this game. We got to do this to win. We got to do this, and McCutchen, Burnett. I mean, I'm gonna miss somebody's names too many times, but it was really fun to watch how that clubhouse grew, not only as professional ball players, but as a team.
You know, Monday night I had a conversation with Drew Smith, and it turned into this really lengthy conversation, and it was so interesting to me that actually, over and above the interview, I had to write an article about it, because Drew talked about at length a 6 to 8 month process he went through with a biomechanics sports scientist. Now, you know, it's funny because an opening day, the Mets, when they trotted everybody out, including their sous chef, they, had a, no, I kid you not. And the soft tissue massage guy was introduced on opening day.
That's
But they
beautiful.
mentioned the sports scientist, and I really didn't know what a sports scientist was until I
Hmm.
spoke to Drew. And what he said was that Jeremy Hefner had noticed that he'd lost 2 miles off of his fastball,
Hmm.
and they didn't know why. And the sports scientist broke down video and then hooked up, Drew to this whole biomechanical thing that
Hmm.
Drew said turned his body into a skeleton. And they were able to take footage from when he was at his best and his fastball was topping out to be a plus fastball to where it was now. And they found like minor inconsistencies with arm slot,
Hmm.
even the way his chest was expanded, when he started, and the way he leaned forward or back. And it took him 6 to 8 months to regain the muscle memory of where his arm slot and his posture was. And
Hmm.
now he's back to where he feels he's back to where Drew Smith was.
Hmm.
That being said, a lot of us, poo-poo these analytics and all these things and the biomechanics. As a pitching coach, first of all, what has been the evolution from when you pitched to when you were a pitching coach, even to now? And can you even use that type of technology to try and alleviate the possibility of, Tommy John down the road, or rotator cuff,
Hmm.
or all these different injuries that pitchers are coming across?
Hmm. Um, I agree with it. You could find so many different things. It's like almost like running a car. You got an alternator, you got a battery, you got a carburetor, all those things. And if that's not running all together, your car is going to sputter a little bit. Now, basically with pitchers, if their body is in sync from the bottom of their feet all the way to the top of their head, and everything's working as one smooth, with a one smooth motion with a cadence behind it, you could work less harder but be more efficient. And with all this information that they're coming out with now, it boggles my mind because in my day, we either had sprints, intermediates, or go jog or ride the bike, and then go grab a rock and do 200 sit-ups on the side of the hill over there. That was it. That was
And
it.
long toss.
And
And
long
long
toss,
toss.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. That's a yeah, and a long toss. And then they came out with this baseball that was pure lead, and then you do circles like all this stuff and everything. And now to where they are now, my gosh, I wish I had some of that information when I pitched. It would have been a lot more easier to pitch, and probably wouldn't have had half the injuries that I had. But I think there's a lot of validity to it. I agree with it, and especially I would leave it up to the brainiacs that know what to do right there. If somebody came up to me as a coach and said, "Listen, we could build 2 miles an hour on let's say Mahalam's fastball," I said, "Go for it. Is he in it? Does he agree with you?" He goes, "Yeah." Then go for it. Let's do it. So the only thing is the timing of it. When do you
Right.
do it? I mean, if you could get it early or at the end of the season, so this way you could work on it during the off season. That'll
Yeah,
even be
that's when Drew
better.
did it, which, yeah, which
Yeah,
was, it was fascinating. It really was.
yeah.
I remember talking to you about some of the guys that really, had a big impression on you. And if I remember correctly, the guy you mentioned was Dave Ricketts, who was your manager, former Cardinal catcher in Sarasota,
Hmm.
and he meant so much to you. Um, so I know there are a lot more guys that get directly to the majors, very little minor league time. But that's not the norm. Most of the guys do climb the ladder the way traditionally
Hmm.
you did in the day. How important are those managers, down at that minor league level now to be like almost old school but embrace, analytics, because
Right.
there's so much mental toughness that needs to be developed in the minor leagues. You
Yes.
need to learn how to fail. You need to learn how to adjust. And
Right.
at every single level, every single day, there's these adjustments to be made. So how important is that? And who were the guys? Dave Ricketts, obviously, but
Hmm.
besides Ricketts, who else were those guys for you?
Uh, Doc Edwards, if you remember him.
Cleveland Indians, right?
Yeah,
Also,
and also was with the Mets though too,
Mets. Yep.
as a bench coach, I think, or
Coach.
first base
Yep.
coach. Um, let's see, Don Rowe. Don Rowe. I don't know if you remember him. He was a pitching coach in the Milwaukee organization. I think he was 1 year with them, and then he was with the White Sox, I think. But he was a guy. He was out at Golden West. I don't know if it's a university or a college, but it's out there in California. He made me go out there and to get tested. And he was the one that was my pitching coach in AAA that taught me how to throw the curveball over the falls, how to box my fastball on the outside. If you take the strike zone, but you got to shrink it. Okay. If you could box your fastball, let's say a right-handed hitter, down and away to a righty, into a righty, down and away to a lefty, and so on and so forth. He's the one that taught me and put things in perspective where my left-handedness mind worked with his because he was left-handed too. And I haven't seen the major leagues. Once I got traded over to Cleveland, I was in Cleveland for 2 years, and then I went signed as a free agent to Milwaukee, and I was there for 1 year, not even in the minor leagues, because Don Rowe was there. He was the guy that really got me focused on what I have to do for myself, and the way he taught was very. I absorbed it. So the other part of your question was if you could repeat that.
About how important it is, from the mental side of things to be able to deal with failure and adversity. How important are the coaches there to be able
Yeah,
to help you through that?
they are tremendous. If you had a bad outing on Monday, they would talk to you on Tuesday. They wouldn't shun you. They wouldn't shun you. They would talk to you and say, "Hey, how's your altitude?" "Oh, about 8,000 feet." "Oh, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Come here, man. Let me tell you. All right, some days you have it, some days you don't. Don't worry about it. You're going to be out there again today. So whatever the situation is, just lay it out there and just do your best." And I didn't feel any pressure when they did that. So when I did get the ball again, majority of the time you have a sense of, hey, if I mess up here, I'm not going to be sitting in the bullpen for like 5 days. I'm going to be okay. And it helped you mentally. That's the biggest thing too, Marky, is that mentally in the minor leagues, that's when you start developing as a major leaguer mentally. And then this brain, this computer up here, mine has two cells. All right, these two cells up here, they work together, and then before you know it, you get what you're dreaming of.
You mentioned about boxing a fastball and such, but it's interesting. I remember speaking to Guy Conti, and he showed me a grip that Pedro used for his curveball, which was different than anybody else. It was
Mm-hmm.
the way the pressure on the finger. So, as a pitching coach, obviously everyone's hands are different. Everyone
Right.
holds the ball different. Now, obviously, with Rapsodo and all these different technologies where you can get the spin rate of a pitch,
Mm-hmm.
do why do pitchers have different breaks on the ball? Why do pitchers have more rotational spin than why did Seth Lugo 1 year have unbelievable spin rate and then it drops off? Like, how does that happen if you're gripping the ball? I mean, obviously, there's no way of knowing if you're putting the exact same pressure with your fingers each time because we're not
Mm-hmm.
computers. We can't do that. I mean, how difficult is that to do? People don't
Now,
fathom that. It's like,
no, that's why, uh, many are picked, but few are chosen to go to the major leagues. There's a lot that has to do with the person himself, the DNA that he's got, what they do during the off season. Do they sit on their laurels after they had a good year, or do they continue to work hard and have a better year? Depends on their mental outlook. There are so many different things. I am not fully qualified to give you all the answers on that because it boggles my mind at times too. It's like, why does AJ Burnett, for the years that we had him there, didn't everything was the same. Everything was the same. All we did was make a minor adjustment, but the most of the credit goes to AJ. And he started the spin, his curveball spin was consistent every time he went out there on the mound, unless he was injured. Now we noticed that in Kansas City when he pulled a forearm, he had a forearm strain. So we noticed the difference of that, but that was, that was pretty obvious. But these guys, what kind of, like what kind of workout program do they do? Do they hold true to it, or do they add something to help them, or in thinking that adding something to help them doesn't help them, and it takes away from them. So it's almost like a puzzle, and you got to put it together and you try to figure out what's going on, and that's why uh, you surround yourself with good people, and they help you out. And it's not my way or the highway; it's our way, and we'll figure out something.
I have two more before I turn it over to the Zoom room because they ask better questions than I do anyway. One of the things I got to ask Billy Epler when they signed Cody Senga was I found it interesting. Like Cody Senga has the ghost fork. But there have been so many other pitchers that have come over from Japan, starting with Daisuke with the gyro ball.
Mhm.
They have totally different grips than we do here. So I said, why do you think they have these weird, funky pitches? And he thought that they kind of think outside the box, and they experiment a lot more than we do. Why is it? Why would that be? I mean, I think American baseball is the greatest baseball there is, and maybe that's because I'm American. But why are we not thinking out of the box when it comes to pitching so much?
Well, we are in certain guys. Certain guys will go, uh, outside the box. But I think there's a lot of history that's involved in baseball. I think right now what we got on our plate is we got Rapsodo, we got TrackMan, we want to see all these things, and I think in a way that it'll morph over to that, not greatly. Uh, just a little bit more than what we have been, to try some things out. Now, you said those two pitchers for the Mets, went out and tried some different grips on some different pitches. Well, that's a form of it, but it's not outside the box the way Japan does.
Right.
And or Korea, what they bring over. And it's just, I wish I had the right answer for you. I wish I could give you a light bulb that'll turn on and right over your head. But there's so many different variables involved, with the history of the game, and also they've got nothing to lose in trying these different pitches over
That's
on
true.
it. And
Right.
these guys are, we've got a lot of history behind us, and sometimes it's hard to let go of that. So.
Right. All right, so I got this one last one because for my Mets first book, this is still one of my favorite stories, and I don't think I've ever told this on the air, and it's perfect because I want you to tell it. We all grew up, we all get, in Little League, you would get your game ball, and in the major leagues, they get a game ball too. You probably have the most unique game ball story that I've ever heard. Could you share that with the guys?
You talking about Terry Leach?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're in Chicago, and it's hotter than Hades there. My my socks got like 6 layers of sweat and dirt all over them, and I'm out there, and I pitch an inning, and then we come back and we score. Oh, wait a minute! I think I got my first hit that game too. I think
First hit, first save, and Leach got his first win, right?
got his first win, right?
Right.
Oh my gosh, man, you're digging up bones. Beautiful. Okay, so oh geez, I remember getting up at the plate, okay, and I did my Pete Rose imitation. I figured if I shrank the strike zone, Dick Tidrow is a low ball hitter from down under. I got a better chance of hitting it anyway. And I got a U1. So it's like the handle's almost as thick as the barrel. So I get up there and go a la Pete Rose and put the bat on my shoulders from here like this. First pitch, strike one. I'm like, okay, I got no chance. And then next pitch, same spot, same fastball. It had a little move. I hit it. It hit him, went off his shin, and I think it went in the dugout. So I got into second base because the ball went into the dugout, but I got the base hit off of Dick. And Dick signed the ball for me too. And I saw him 15 years later. And then Terry Leach came in. We scored a run. I came in, and all of a sudden, I don't know what I was out there. I'm out there for a save. Okay, fine. Let's go. I get the save. We got the game ball. I got the game ball. And because Terry got his first win and I got my first save, my dad took it to his business. He was a store developer like EJ Corvettes. I don't know if you guys remember that. Yeah, he was one of the big wigs, so he brought it to his people who make the mannequins and stuff. They took it, they cut the ball in half, they put, and it's right there. I got it. If you want me to, I'll pull it off the wall. I'll show you.
Yeah, you guys show it.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Okay. All right, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Gee, this is more. No, wait a minute. This is more fun than I thought it would be. Okay, the ball was cut in half. Okay, my father wrote on it. Okay, they put the plate on it in the shop with the board, and you could tell if I don't know if you guys could see it. Oh, geez, can you see the writing? It says
Yeah.
race Searage, but look how it's not professional. It's somebody with one of those electromagnetic things. The pen, and so I got this. Terry got his first major league win, and it's been hanging in my trophy room on my wall over there since that day. And it's
And Terry's got the other half in the same
Terry's
exact
got the
board.
other half, yeah. And it's
it's
September
awesome.
9th, 1981.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's great.
Go ahead. I'm good.
All right. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to the Zoom room, guys.
Okay.
Obviously, just a quick reminder, keep yourself muted, ask question, use the raise hand function. I'll unmute you. As always, I don't even have to remind you guys, keep it respectful, which you always do. That's why we love the KINER'S Corner group. It's growing. You guys are great. Steve doing it old school. So go ahead, Stevie, unmute and go. Unmute.
Hey there, Ray. How are you?
Hi, Stevie. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. So I know you're a Deer Park boy. If you see behind me, that's the Northport Sweet Shop.
All right, cool.
I grew up in East Northport, so just north of you. I want to ask a question related to pitching. And you go out there, you pitch a phenomenal game, and your team just can't get it together and get you some runs to get that win for you. I think that's what we're experiencing right now with the Mets. I don't think anybody on here expected the starting pitching to be lights out. I think that we were hoping that they'd keep us in a game and that the offense would carry them, and just the opposite has happened. So as a pitcher, mentally, does that affect you where you throw a gem, but then the rest of your team just doesn't produce?
Not really. And these are famous words by Clint Hurdle that he filtered down from the coaching staff to the players. Control what you can control. So you go out there, you do your job. You're trying to stop that team from putting up runs or a lot of runs, and let the offense take care of themselves. And when you have the bat in your hand, you get that runner over the second base or make that pitcher throw more than 5 pitches to you. These guys are true professionals, and Liriano was one, AJ was one. Okay, they'd go out there and they'd bust their tail for 7, 8 innings, and the score would be 2-0. And we don't have anything going. There's nothing we can muster. They know they did everything they possibly can to give us a chance to win the game. And if sometimes you got to tip your hat to the other pitcher too, that he came with his A game too. So it just happened that day. But I have never, and I sincerely say this, Stevie, is that I have never had a pitcher say, "Why don't they score runs for me? Why am I this? Why?" Never in my coaching career, whether it be the minor leagues or the major leagues, that I had anybody ever complain. They know what they had to do. They did their job, and they know that the offensive guys are trying.
Great, thanks for that.
You got it.
Yeah, there's those other days where you might go up and give a 5 spot in the first inning, and then the offense gets 7 runs. So yeah, that's that's baseball, Susan. All right, Sal, you raised your hand computer wise, so go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, I did it the old-fashioned way.
Yes.
Oh boy, Sal.
We have to show Ray like this good-looking young fella over here.
Oh gosh, I don't even have half the hair now.
Neither do I.
Hey, Ray, you really had to go there? You had to go there?
Hey, okay.
Oh,
Moment of truth, fellas.
I declare. Wasn't sure which hat to wear, Rosie, because I had 3 for Ray, but we decided to go with the Dodger one for.
There we go.
All right.
There we go.
It's not bad.
The question is this: you coached for a long time.
Yeah.
Pitchers today, all they want to do is throw the ball through a brick wall.
Mhm.
What would you tell today's guys as opposed to when you started coaching? When it's not like they want to learn how to pitch anymore. They
Right.
just go as hard as they can. How do you get that into a younger player's head that, you might be more effective cutting 2 miles off your fastball?
I want to add one other layer to that, Sal. Not
ahead.
only that, is that all the evaluators, like guys like Maddox, they wouldn't even make the pros anymore because the scout would look at his velocity and wouldn't care if this guy could paint the corners. So I think that might be part of the answer, but I want to add that in if there's places for guys like Maddox in the league anymore.
Yeah, I believe there is. You've got to have people that can pitch with the kids. And Sal, the biggest thing that I'm finding out is that I give lessons, not on a steady basis, but like they're picking up now. And all these kids want to do is try, how do I throw the ball harder? How do I make my curveball sharper? And these kids are 12 to 15 years old. And I'm like, my eyes are coming out of my head. I'm like, well, number one, we got to make sure that you're mechanically sound in order to do that. If you have a major leaguer that's that way, you just try to, it's like having a piece of granite and you just got to keep chipping away a little bit at a time that, you don't have to throw harder. How about executing the pitch, staying within yourself and maximizing what you got? Let's say you pitch around 96, 97, and you want to throw 98, 99, 100, and you're all over the GD place. Well, that's not going to be conducive of you getting outs. You're just going to run your pitch count up, and then before you know it, you're not even going to be done. And it's a tough go, especially at the major league level, and there are guys that do that. Okay, but at the younger age, they see all the numbers from the radar guns and everything on TV, and they want to do that. But Tom Seaver, what he said baseball was ruined when we got the radar gun. As soon as they popped up the radar gun, baseball was going to have some trouble. And here's a guy who could pitch and throw hard. Why can't you do both? Why can't you do both? And, it's really a tough sell. It's really a tough sell. And I got 12-year-olds that want to learn how to throw a slider. I go, you want to learn how to throw a slider, son? I'm not your guy. You're going fastball changeup until you're 16, 17, and then we'll go from there, whether you could hang a breaking ball or not.
It seems to be starting younger and younger for these kids because, they see I could make $1 billion if I could throw 117 miles an hour.
Right.
It's not only that, Sal. I mean, unfortunately, with the team I'm coaching, I see a lot of, this travel ball mentality in these PG tournaments where they're ranking 13 and 14-year-old kids, showing the fastest speed by a 14-year-old. I have kids, they're pitching, and we work at the Long Island Fieldhouse, which is one of the state-of-the-art places on Long Island. It's beautiful. They have hit tracks. And after every swing, the guys turn around to see what their exit velocity is and how far the ball went. And I tell them, you need to look at that screen to let you know if you barreled up that ball or not.
Right.
Like, and then when they go to pitch, they go, do you have a radar gun? I go, no. I said, you're not going to throw against a gun. I'd rather see you throw 10 strikes as opposed to one ball, 95 miles an hour. And
Bingo.
but this is what, because of the perfect game tournament and what certain colleges are like. Colleges ask the kids when they send their forms in, what's your average, fastball at? It's different. And, I keep on telling the kids, look no further than the Chicago Cubs when they started posting, they were the first team, I think, to put the, how fast the pitches were going, and that was a year Kerry Wood and all of them blew out their arms.
Right.
And it would pitch into the gun.
Right.
But it's out of the box. It's not going back.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
You're right, Mark.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Oh, absolutely. Greg, a newbie in the group. Greg, unmute and go ahead. Welcome to the corner.
Hey, thanks. Ray, I'm going to take you back to 1981, please.
Mm-hmm.
How was Bob Gibson to work with as your pitching coach?
Man, I'll tell you, very low key and very knowledgeable. You, as a rookie, when I looked at Bob Gibson, Starfish was kind of tight. It's just like, whoa, this guy knows his stuff. He was a World Series winner. Oh my God! But he was compared to Rube, because Rube was there too with Bob, Mr. Gibson and Mr. Walker. Rube was on hands in there, and Mr. Gibson would stay to the back because Rube was the pitching coach, and Bob was, like the assistant pitching coach, but they didn't say that back then. How can you have a World Series winner be an assistant pitching coach? But they both had their hands in everybody that was there because Bob could teach you or set you up to be able to pitch inside to open up the outside part of the plate. And he would explain why you did that and what kind of reaction the hitter would have, and tell you what I want you to do tomorrow. I want you to watch the game within the game. I go, watch the game within the game. I thought the baseball was just the game. I didn't know there was another game inside that game. And he opened my eyes to that. And this is at the major league level too. So like I said before, I'm a young pup at 26 years old, and I have no blessed clue, what to do up there. I'm just like, okay, I'm pitcher. I'm a pitcher. I throw strikes. I get people out. But he started getting me into thinking about the X's and O's and watching hitters' reaction and watching hitters' swings. What, is he late? Is he behind the ball? Is he right on top? Or did it go straight back? He's right on it, So he opened my eyes to a lot of things. And my gosh, between those two guys, you couldn't go wrong. You couldn't go wrong if you asked a question. But there was so much information that I was getting from two of these things. It made my head like a spaghetti bowl. But it was later on, as a coach, they started coming to more fruition. And I'm like, yeah, that'll play here. Yeah, that's good. I couldn't do it. Yeah, but this guy can. So I have nothing but high regard for Mr. Gibson. A fantastic human being, and definitely very knowledgeable as a pitching coach. It helped out not only me, but Terry Leach, Neil Allen. He was able to talk to a lot of people.
And then you throw in Piggy too. I mean, the catcher who.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Piggy was the guy. Piggy was the loud one. What are you doing? What's that? What's that? Because you throw a breaking ball and just go like this. He goes, I get a bat and I'll crush you. Okay.
He had that weight. I'll never forget. I mean, one of the greatest lines. Thank God it wasn't to me. Met fantasy camp. He's down by the pitching tube, and this guy's throwing, and he's throwing. And then Piggy walks up to him. He goes, yeah. He goes, what did you do as a kid? And like the guy thought like he was going to pump him up. Yeah. And he goes, you sure as S didn't play baseball? You can't even throw a ball, man. That guy was just crushed.
He was very unfiltered.
Oh, yeah. But it's also interesting you mentioned Gibby and, setting up batters. And, unfortunately, I have this team that it's for a 1 week tournament. It's like it's Olympic type thing. And they all play travel for other teams. And I explained to them, for me, I guess it's by watching guys like Gibson
Mhm.
and Koufax and Drysdale and Seaver. When you have a batter 0-2, I tell these kids, I want you busting them in on the hands.
Mhm.
And they go, no, my coaches tell me I need to go on the way outside. I
Mhm.
go, no, you go way outside the second time after you busted him on the inside and you backed him off the plate.
Right.
And they're all coached by younger guys who now that's the trend. You know, you have 0-2, you go outside and get him to
Yeah.
try and chase. I said,
Right.
listen, if you can throw him up and in, and he has to, like, if it's close on the black, he's got to get a piece of it. And even if he hits it, he's just going to roll it over to the third base side and you're going to get an out, or
Exactly.
you're going to back him off the plate the next time. But they don't do
Mhm.
that anymore. So the
No.
game within the game actually has changed as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it has. It has. It's big time. I think what they're concerned about is hitting somebody. That's why your pens need to be um, really worked on, especially with a pitching dummy. One of those plastic bodies that you see. It's got a red top or a blue top, and then it's like a cream thing, and it just stands up there just like this. And so this way you could work on not picking up the hitter or just picking up that area where you want that pitch to go to.
Yeah.
And majority of what I told my guys is that if you want that pitch to go up and in, don't throw a two-seamer in there because that two-seamer will run and it'll
Rise.
go from the shoulder and up. Stay with that four-seamer, but as you said before, you got to have conviction with it. If you don't throw it with conviction, it's not going to serve a purpose. It's not going to serve a purpose.
All right. Anybody else have any questions in the Zoom room before we let Ray go and we'll talk a little Met baseball? Nobody? All right. Ray, as always, it's always fun talking to you, and hope to see you. You coming to New York anytime soon?
I will try to because my brother still lives up there in Deer Park. So usually during the summer I'll try to do it, but I'll try to make it where the Mets are in town and we'll come to a game. I'll give you a heads
Awesome.
up. All right.
Great. All
All
right,
right.
Ray. Thanks so much.
Okay,
And
guys. Thank you.
Clint said he's going to come back on when he's free, so we'll have you back that day as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Gentlemen,
Awesome.
take care, and it was a pleasure. I hope I answered
Thanks,
your
Ray.
questions.
Absolutely. Great
Thank
stuff,
you,
Ray.
Mark. Thank you.
You got it. Be good.
All
All
right,
right,
you
guys.
too.
So this is a much better show after a win than it would have been at 0-6. A couple of things to unpack from the game today. And listen, and I guess we can start with, I don't know how many, like, I lost my mind over Norman and Sal Licata this week. I just can't take it. And, and I am so happy for this group and the KINER'S Corner page that we've been growing. It's it's work. I make sure we don't get all those spam things that are in a lot of the other Met groups, but it's respectful. And listen, team's struggling. There's no question about it. Mendoza today, the batty bunt is that's puzzling to me. When you're not going, I get it. You're trying to move the runner over. But he's at this point, he's one of your better hitters. I'd rather have 3 shots at getting a single than, 1 shot of getting a fly ball and then, and then having to get the single. Pete's hit could be a huge, huge hit. 0-6 and just, not getting a hit for 13 innings, wasting 3 great pitching outings over the last 4 games. That would have been devastating. Now you go on the road, you're not gonna get 4 wins in 1 game. Chip away at it. I've been a big proponent of chunking out seasons in 10-game, parcels. You're not going to win every 10-game group, but if you win more 10-game groups than you lose at the end of the season, you should be okay. The offense is not going to be this bad all season. It's not. It can't be. And if it is, well, then this is going to be a brutal season. But I can't imagine that it's going to be this bad. Guys are pressing. Lindor is pressing. He wants to do badly. He wants to do well so badly. He's had opportunities to break through, and that 3-pitch strikeout with the runner at second today was in the 13th inning where they hadn't gotten a run. You thought that might have been the time. But, now you got Pete, who's really, listen, I mean, Pete's doing what he needs to do in a walk year for him. Hopefully that continues. Marte, I don't know if anyone asked him in the post game because I was getting ready for this, if that bunt was a called bunt or if he did that on his own. So that's an interesting, decision that he made. But one of the things, and I put it in the group, and some people said, it doesn't matter. And it's funny as I get older. Listen, I am not an analytics type guy. All right, I don't like a lot of the numbers, but I find myself looking at them more and more. And there was a caller I heard on that called Don LaGreca and kind of called Don LaGreca out because LaGreca is like, he's more the eye test, and enough with these analytics, enough with the. And the guy said, he goes, "You're being foolish, Don." Like as whoa. And the guy said, "Do you use Waze or Google Maps in the car?" And Don said, "Yeah." He goes, "Why? You know how to get there. Why are you using that?" That's a form of analytics because Google Maps and Waze, if there's traffic, they give you different ways and reroute you the best possible way to get there. He said, analytics are no different. Yes, there are percentages. And if those percentages tell you that this particular lineup is going to give you a better shot than other lineups, it's based on something. It's not just mumbo jumbo. I still believe in the eye test just because Brett Batty might have great numbers against a particular pitcher. Those numbers are over the course of time. If Brett Batty's in an 0 for 21 slump, those numbers to me don't hold any weight because he's not on his game. So there are a lot of things that you look at. And one of them is that the Mets right now, coming into today's play, I think had the third highest exit velocity rating of any team. And they also had the lowest earned run average in baseball. Now, someone made the fact that they don't give a crap about exit velocity. Look at Mookie Wilson's hit. I agree. And I tell the kids the same thing. You don't need to know how fast the ball got off your bat. When you barrel up a ball. But from a major league standpoint, if you're hitting the ball hard, the balls are going to find gaps eventually. It's better than not hitting the balls hard. Are they as bad as a 1-5 record? Probably not. Are they anywhere near close to being a very good team right now? Not with the way they're hitting. But that being said, it's a long season. Again, 1-5. Had they started the season, 7-2 and going a 1-5 streak, you probably don't magnify it as much as the media is right now. And listen, Mendoza downplayed it also. He said, we're going to go through, parts where, the pit, we know this. There are times in a season when the pitching is on and you can't get that hit. There's time when you are hitting a ton and your starting pitchers can't go through 3 innings. It's the teams that are able to manage those ebbs and flows that end up having winning records. Long time to go. No panic. Let's see what happens. I don't like the fact that Marte, who has repeatedly said he likes hitting in the number 2 spot, is hitting so low in the lineup. Sometimes you got to listen to a player. If he feels comfortable, even if it's BS, just if he feels comfortable, you put him in an area where he could succeed. So for me, Marte should be in the 2 hole. Other than that, listen, Budo and Reed, kudos to them, man. There was nobody left. They needed to do what they did, and they did it. They held the fort long enough for Pete to get that home run. Let's see. I mean, listen, if you followed up with another 5-game losing streak, it means nothing. But if you can build off of that and get the energy off of that, other thing that's concerning is, granted, crappy day, not nice out at all. The attendance, man, that looked back to the Nickelodeon Fun Zone days where there was, Sal, you and I could go and pick up a ticket for $4 for the upper deck and walk down and sit right behind home plate because there was nobody there. It was not a good look, and that's got to be concerning to management as well. If these are the crowds that are going to be out there at Citi Field all season long, they might think hard, take a long look at what their expenditure is going to be next season. I know he's gone out of his way and said he views this as a philanthropic, endeavor, and, he's doing his civic duty by, hoping the Mets become a winner. But Yeah, he's also, trust me, he's looking at the bottom line. And if fans don't show up, he's not going to be that philanthropic, trust me. So those are a couple of my thoughts. 6 games in, turn it over to you guys. Let me know what you feel.
I think when JD Martinez gets here, I'm not worried about lengthening the lineup. I think his approach is going to be contagious to other guys. I mean, here's a guy, when he started, he was not a good hitter.
Right.
He created himself to be an excellent hitter. So I think his mindset will carry over to some of these guys like, hey, maybe I'm not working as hard as I should. I don't know if they are or not, but I think he's going to have that impact besides being a really great hitter, and I don't know, Marte,
Great point.
slot. I still think McNeil should bat second, left-hander, but Nimmo's got to get on base.
Well, he did. I mean, you saw Nimmo at bats the last, he 3 walks, and to start the game he was down 0-2. He battled back. He walked. That's you're starting to see Nimmo, but he's also got to steal. If they lost the game, so obviously when we write these articles, we have turning points, and it was so far there's been a lot of rewrites. It's like you start the story, you think it's going to go away, but when they were going to look like they were going to lose the game 1-0, a turning point, which probably people would have forgotten, which again, the old adage is you go to the ballpark, you see something you've never seen before in your life. Nimmo steals second, goes to third base on the throw that goes to the outfield, and has to go back to first base because of umpire interference. Right. So, instead of having Nimmo at third base, where now the pitcher has to pitch differently, he's back at first base with 2 outs. A big turning point in a 1-0 game. Thank God they won the game, but I've never seen umpire interference on a catcher in my life. Never seen that before until, of course, it happened to the Mets today. But yeah,
Angel was the home plate, right?
What?
Angel was home plate.
No, it was the second game.
Okay.
So yeah, everyone blames Angel, but chances are it would have been him, but it wasn't. Stevie, your thoughts so far?
It's so hard, and as you said, I was done with FAN a long time ago. That's just it's ridiculous. I mean, it's the National Enquirer of sports radio. You can't take any of it seriously. But unfortunately, it is bled into the fan base.
Yep.
And just reading texts from my cousins who keep adjusting their season prediction from 83 wins down to 55 today based on 6 games that they're seeing. I look at, and yes, we're only 6 games in. Historically, teams haven't gotten to the playoffs starting out 0-5. They just historically they don't. I think there's like 3 instances that's happened.
The 2013 Pirates were 1-5. They won the wild card.
Pirates.
They won 94 games. Won 94 games.
If you look going back to last season, we had concerns about the whole lineup and everybody was doing. Now you're looking at Nimmo, Lindor, and McNeil. All 3 being like what I think McNeil after this game upped his average to like 0.067, and the Lindor and Nimmo are like 0.4 something. Yeah. But at least with Nimmo and Lindor, I felt at the end of the season that you felt like, okay, they're going to be okay. Any thoughts on McNeil, and has maybe the speed of the game changed his approach with hitting, that he's just no longer that 300 hitter from 2022?
It's a good question. I mean, right now I would say that he had to ramp up in spring training. He didn't have a full spring training. He didn't get a lot of at-bats in spring training. I think he had like 14 at-bats in spring training total. Mm-hmm. So I think he's still rusty. Would he have been served better if he stayed back and did the same thing that JD Martinez is doing now and gotten a few more bats? I don't know. It's concerning. He's coming off an injury. He's older. He's coming off of a down year. Those are all valid questions. I don't know if he's a 300 hitter anymore. I really don't. But you know what? At second base, if he gives me 280, I'll take that. I'll take 280 as a second baseman. That's fine. And I don't know if he needs to hit up in the line. Listen, I know Marte loves the 2 spot. That's where he's always been, and that's where he's always succeeded. So, I think you kind of stay with that. I don't know what, I think he gives you more. And plus the fact, you know what, if Nimmo's not going to steal, then Marte's got to be in the 2-hole. Because nobody else on that team steals a base. So if Nimmo gets out and Marte gets on, or, unfortunately, Lindor does also steal 30-30 last year, but he's not getting on right now. So you need to be able to have guys on the base. I don't know what it is with Nimmo. I spoke to him 2 years in a row, and last year he said that the analytics department, but this year he said the analytics department has changed and they wanted to steal bases. I don't know why he's afraid to steal a base. Listen, you take a look at what the Brewers did to us, and even today, teams run on us. Why don't we run?
Which is interesting, right? Because I feel like Alvy's really come into his own, and I feel like we're blessed to have him, and that he's
well, most of the stolen bases have come off of Navy. I think the big game with the Brewers were all off of Navy. I think they scored either 4 or 5, and today was against Navy also. So
yeah, it kind of reminds me of the 2015 season where we just could not throw anybody out.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think about flipping Nimmo and Marte? Put Marte lead off because he's going to steal the bases. He gets on base, he hits. Nimmo is patient enough to at least move the runner.
No, I agree. I think Marte's kind of lost down there. I think his mindset is, he's also a type of guy, just like Ray said, he's like a little leaguer. He wants to play. If you now make him, the way the offense is going, have to wait 2 innings, as a 6th batter in the bottom of the 2nd inning, as opposed to him having all that energy early in a game, I think listen, we were successful when he was in the 2-hole and healthy. So I think you got to go back to what you were successful with. But listen, obviously it's analytics and they look at things and lineup construction, so I'm sure there's a reason, and probably, if he doesn't on this road trip make it into the 2-hole, that's one of the questions I'm going to ask Mendy. And that's the other thing. Like when they keep on referring him to Mendy, I'm such a Seinfeld. I keep on thinking that a soup's not a meal. Every single time they mention Mendy's, the soup's not a meal. It's crazy. So, Greg, you're new in the room. Go ahead. We want to get your take so far on what's going on.
Oh man! Thank goodness for that win today, huh? That gave that allowed me to exhale a little bit. I'm getting beat up down here in Pennsylvania because I'm sandwiched between the Orioles, the Phillies, and the Pirates, who are,
Is that an Al Oliver Scoop jersey, by the way? Behind
it is, as a matter of fact. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scoop.
So
Scoop, one of my favorite players.
That was my brother's favorite player. In front of me, I have a number 16 Mazzilli jersey.
Nice. Wow. 2 ends of the spectrum.
That was my guy growing up. I agree with you. I think Marte gotta be, in that 1-2 hole. I think that energy is something's missing here on this. And I know it's only 6 games into the season. I get it, but my fear was the pitching staff coming into the season. Right. And I think that was everyone's. But wow, this offense is just it's tough to watch. I mean, they went 13 innings without getting a hit here between in this doubleheader today. And my fear was them getting no hit today. Goodness. So I don't know. I'd like to see some kind of maybe small ball or something that to get this offense going. I mean, this, the 2-run homer saved them today. Yeah.
The 1-run homer and the walk-off for sure. I mean, there's no question that was huge. And you're right. But the problem is, and you can't blame him either. Like you don't want to do a hit and run when nobody's hitting. But you got to steal bases. You got to steal bases. If nobody's hitting, you got to steal bases. And I think that was also his mentality, to bunt the runner over with Batty. pinch run and steal the base. Actually, I think who was wrong? I think he did. I think Zach Short was the runner when he bunted him over. I don't even remember now. It was a blur because it was whatever. But yeah, like steal a base. You can steal bases in this league now. It's easier than ever. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that loss today to blowing it. You finally score 3 runs and then you blow it in the bullpen when the bullpen's been good. Out of Vino, and that's the other thing. Like, use Diaz for 2 innings. You got to get the win. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Use Diaz for 2 innings.
Buck never had a problem doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
I know he's come off injury, but it's not an injury to his arm. It's use him for 2 innings and get your win. That the other day was
100%.
When you brought him in the ninth.
What was what's your take on that? In the first game, they had Alvarez and Beatty going 4-5. What'd you think about that?
It was interesting. I kind of like Pete in the 4-hole. I'd like Alvarez's protection behind him in the 5-hole. That's where I would say. But listen, nothing's working right now because Lindor is not hitting. Yes, Lindor is your guy. I mean, if he's in the 2 or the 3-hole, everything moves around him. I know Joel, who's in the room, always wanted Lindor behind Pete to give Pete protection. Listen, JD Martinez is gonna, like Sal said, he's gonna right a lot of the things that's wrong with this lineup for sure.
Yeah.
No question about it. There's Joel. All right, Joel, go ahead. I know you're itching to get in. Go ahead, babe.
Oh, Mark, where do I start? Well, again, JD may change things, but Lindor provides protection, but also allows you to turn over the lineup. So I remember Barry Bonds, when he was on the Pirates, hit 5th. People won't remember that. But Vince Like hit 3rd, Bonilla hit 4th, Bonds hit 5th. Why did that work? Because Bonds, being a star, protected the 2 guys in front of him. But if he was leading off the 2nd inning, he could walk and steal 2nd. So because Lindor is our most dynamic offensive player, he belongs 5th. Now, Lindor was also terrible in April. He's always terrible in April.
Always,
it's not an excuse. It's just the reality. That's the point.
Exactly.
The point is,
he'll still end up hitting 280.
It doesn't mean that he's done because he looks terrible.
Right.
I do wonder. I do have a criticism, even though I like him as a player, that he seems to go for the home run even on 1-2 counts. I think he's a left-handed. I think he's a good enough hitter to hit 280 if he wouldn't. But what do I know? I'm not. That's on that. I don't know. I logged on late. If you spoke about Ottavino, but he was horrendous last year. Good guy. Love to see him on SNY. He had a great career, and he was great 2 years ago. When he opted out, I said, "Wow, talk about lucking out." And then we re-signed him. That to me was the moment I realized we really weren't going for it this year. Where I disagree with people, I am not a negative Met fan. The first 6 games didn't affect me at all. I thought that this team was a 75-win team. And when all of the SNY guys said they're in the high 80s, mid to high 80s, I just don't see it. And that was true before this week. I would never judge it on this week. I just want to say one more thing. Right. Yes, it looks like the pitching's great and the hitting's terrible, but that 100% could be the weather. It's not merely a small sample size. It's not an accurate sample size. So I do think this is a bad team. Now, what could change? Well, JD Martinez is good. Now he's 35. These guys could get old. You could tell me that Jet Williams and Acuna comes up in a couple of months. I don't see that changing because the 13-man pitching staff has 2 good pitchers, Senga and Diaz, assuming Senga's back.
See, I'm going to disagree with you there. But
then you have a bunch of maybes. Quintana's reliable, but who coming into this season? I'm going to set you up for this, Mark, because I know what your opinion is.
You know what I'm going to say.
Who coming into this season was as reliable as, say, Bassett coming into 2022, or even Taijuan Walker, or Marcus Stroman the year before? I'll shut up and I'll hang up and listen.
So next time wear the robe.
So Joel knows why he did set me up, because I actually put it up there. Now listen, and I made this point when they brought in Senga and wasn't Verlander and Quintana. When they brought in Senga and Quintana last year, I asked Billy Epler, why would you go away from two guys that were able to have success here in New York in Bassett and Walker and bring in two guys that you don't know if they're going to have that success in Senga and Quintana? All right. That being said, all right, Manaea and Severino. If you take, and I put it up there, Joel, if you go back and look at the chart, if you took Bassett and Taijuan Walker's New York Mets records out of the equation and compared them side by side with Manaea and with Severino, every single statistical category, every single one, Severino and Manaea are better than Bassett and Walker without their Met years. Okay. So just because they had good Met careers, when you're saying who is reliable, they were reliable as Mets. But you take their records out, take a look. It's still on the Facebook page. I put it directly to you. Take a look at it.
Yeah.
Now, Severino, I spoke to him and he said that, listen, Severino had a lights out spring training. He was electric in spring training. He said he didn't have command of his curveball and he felt it was because of the weather. It was cold. He still felt everything else was good. His curveball was not there. Manaea looked like Manaea, was unbelievable in 6 innings. Again, one outing, either crappy or good doesn't make a difference. And listen, I love Taijuan Walker. Bassett, Bassett, I was always worried about him in a big game. He's a little, I don't know, but you're right. Listen, they were good as Mets. We don't know what we're going to get out of them. But if you get similar to what you got out of Walker and Bassett as Mets, this is an 83 win team. If you get what you got out of Severino, and Severino was funny. He said, listen, he goes, my 2 first starts last year for the Yankees were unbelievable. And then I sucked. He goes, I'd rather get my 2 bad ones out of the way and be great the rest of the season. That's what he told me. So again, listen, and you're right. The latest signing, yeah, if you did that 5 years ago, I would have been happy because the Mets probably would have had 20 extra wins because every single time he pitched against us, he beat us, but he's another guy that, and listen, I know there's a lot of people in some of these other Met groups that Stearns is an idiot. Listen, there are a lot of guys that the Brewers had that you and I and everyone in this room knew nothing about, these pitchers that end up having successful careers. I have to say this guy has had a pretty good track record as a talent evaluator. So I'm going to let the season play out. I am always been optimistic. That's why I'm a fan. We watch because we hope we're going to see something that we never thought we'd see. And sometimes we get the unexpected. Sometimes, we don't.
Mark, can I just say something on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're the boss, and I love you, and I love you. So I will grant you, I will agree that Stearns has got a super brain, and he's the right guy for the job. And I think all along, Cohen's realized he should not be the face of the franchise. He should not be doing baseball-related interviews. And just like the Wilpons figured out, we got to get Sandy Alderson out there instead of us. He figured out we need Stearns, and he'd be great. Okay. And I think in the long term, he's great.
Yeah.
My problem is lying to the fans that this is a playoff contending team. I don't expect them to say, hey, we're going to be terrible this year. But the casual fan or the less than casual fan who still goes to 10 games is being sold the same crap that the late 70s and early Mets were being sold, which is, oh, we got these veterans. You're looking at their career numbers. Severino has not had a full season since 2018. Manaea has been terrible since like 2019 or 2020. I forgot. My point is, it reminds me of when we traded for Randy Jones in 81, Torres in 83, over the hill Tom Seaver, although we were mad in 84. I'm off a year. He's 83. Maybe Torres was there. I mean, keep going. How many times do we get Frank Tanana and Pete Harnisch? Well, Pete Harnisch was young.
Wait, you're not going to throw in Mickey Lolich?
Mickey Lolich in the late 70s, yes.
Magic's back.
No, but we always did that. We get those guys. That we
John
get
Candelaria.
that guy that used to be good. Now you're going to tell me that, and I'll agree that Severino and Minaya are younger than those guys.
Yeah.
And I'm not even. And listen, Hauser looked great today, but I'm just saying when you have three maybes. Here's a really oversimplistic rule of thumb. If you have three maybes, one's going to work out. But I guarantee you one's a complete horror story, and one is probably going to be disappointing on top. So great to get three, but I don't want to go into the season with one good guy out of the three, plus Quintana and an injured Senga.
So, Joel, you just basically, your analogy was Sal's strategy in the bars in the 70s. Three maybes. One of them definitely was going to be a horror. One might work out. No, I listen. But I agree with you on multiple levels there. I listen. When you say that they're being dishonest, listen. You have to go and say that you're going to be put a competitive team. And listen, when you have that lineup 1 through 7, 1 through 8, that offensive lineup, I think you are going to be competitive. Listen. You take a look at the Diamondbacks. We didn't know what Carroll was going to be. We didn't know what certain players were going to be on that team, yet they made it to the World Series. Every year there's a team that overperforms and outkicks their coverage. They are in a transition period. I think they've gotten to the point where they've stopped bidding against themselves. I think they were setting the market on a lot of these players. I think they went with a lot of low risk, high reward type signings, and didn't tie themselves up long term. Listen, in the past, we would go out and sign. Listen, look no further than Verlander and Scherzer. Granted, they were older, but you would have thought, hey, these guys are going to be unbelievable for us. Justin Verlander, even though he was old, just like you're saying, they haven't been good. Verlander was a Cy Young Award winner. Okay, no one expected him to be what he was. Right, yep. The year before. Max was
he's 40 or 41. You knew at some point he's going to be done. But yes.
Yeah, but that's why. Right. Or hurt, exactly.
Listen, Scherzer was also like a culture signing. He was a lot like signing Keith Hernandez, bringing intensity and change the culture along with Buck. I don't understand firing Buck. When they fired Buck, I definitely did not understand hiring Mendoza. It's not that Mendoza wouldn't be a great signing for the 1982 Mets or the 1992 Mets or the 2002 Mets. Not 1 year removed from 100-win season. I don't want to change your topics because you're on a different topic, but yeah, they brought in the culture guys. So I still think Bassett and Walker, particularly Bassett, was a good cultured guy. He was intense. I mean, did you think he was going to be a chokester before the end of the year? And if so, why?
Listen, I was never a Stroman fan, and I was never a big, Bassett was serviceable. I always had concerns about him. Listen, Mark Canha, and not that they're bad guys, they're kind of aloof. They were on the outside. And I think that a lot of Bassett's success came because of, I think Walker, Bassett, all those guys, I think a lot of their success was because of Max Scherzer. I mean, he taught, like Ray Searage was talking about, throwing pitches with conviction. That's what Max stretched to Taijuan Walker, and he really worked with Taijuan Walker. I would sit by the dugout and watch every time when Max or Ty weren't pitching, they were talking to each other, and Max was showing different grips and talking pitching to every single guy there. So Max was huge. I mean, Scherzer did a lot of things that people didn't see that helped that team as well. As far as Buck goes, on the other end, seeing Buck should have just stuck to managing. Buck is a micromanager, and probably in other places that work to a certain point. But when you have your hands in every single aspect of an organization, and you think that everything has to be run your way, even though that's not your department, that trickles down and that causes an issue. And I saw some of those. And this is where, and I love Buck. I absolutely love Buck. I thought he was a great manager. I thought he did things unbelievably well. But here's my problem with Buck. If, in fact, that whole Vogelbach, Epler stuff happened, shame on Buck. Because Buck Showalter, at this point of his career, should have went over Billy Epler's head and should have went to Steve Cohen and said, listen, you hired me to manage a team. This is my shot at winning a World Series. I'm going to do it my way. And if you disagree with me benching Vogelback for whoever it is, then fire me now. And he didn't do that. And he succumbed to whatever it was. And then he blamed Epler afterwards in a backhanded way through the media. Now, shame on Buck.
But
I'm
kind
sorry.
of like Brad Pitt did when he was general manager. Maybe Buck wanted to move a lot of different guys in and out of the DH spot, including JD Davis. And then he trades JD Davis for Darren Ruff and trades Colin Halderman, whatever his name is, for Vogelback. Thereby basically saying, I'm giving you these Moneyball guys and you're going to play them because you don't have JD Davis to put there.
Well, he should have pulled a Mike Keenan. He should have, before that happened, he should have said, listen, I want this. Mike Keenan, before the trade deadline, went over, Neil Smith's head and called a meeting with the president of Madison Square Garden and told them to both be there. And the head of Madison Square Garden had them both in a room and said, you guys, you got to play nice in the sandbox. Neil, what do you want to do? Mike, you want to do that? No. All right, then you two settle it and you guys both come up to some consensus that you both agree on, and then you make the trades. If you don't both agree on the trades, I don't want it done. And that's what happened. And then the Rangers won the Stanley Cup. That's what winners do. And I'm sorry, Buck should have done that. This was his shot. He's not getting another job in Major League Baseball as a manager ever again. And that was his shot, and he should have had the balls to do it. And or just owned up to it and said, listen, I quit because they wouldn't let me do things my way. Instead, he kind of went about it the wrong way, kind of floated it out there, and I, I'm not even going to go there as far as Epler, but whatever.
Mark, can I ask you this question?
Yeah,
I've thought about this because when they fired him, I just couldn't believe it. I was stunned. So in April and May last year, I want to say the Mets were 3 games over 500 the first third of the season, which, if you recall, the Braves and the Phillies the prior 2 years may have even been worse than that.
Right.
So a disappointing start, but not crazy, especially with Verlander being hurt and Diaz obviously was hurt.
And Max's suspension and then Smith's suspension for the sticky stuff. Right.
Correct. A lot of different things that wouldn't necessarily be true in the second half. Diaz was still going to be out.
Right.
And oh, by the way, Epler could have replaced our closer when our closer was out by going and getting a real closer. He chose not to do that. Now, he brought in the guy.
Adavino.
No,
Adavino.
Saying he got a waiver claim of the guy and traded. What was it? Yeah, lower level guy. Anyway, in June, they were, I think it was 6-17 with 13 losses by the bullpen. I don't know if they were blown saves or losses. Okay. 6-17, 13 of those were losses by the bullpen. That was, I believe, June. I might be 6-19. Probably 6-19. Then July starts, and they had a really good July. I want to say it was almost a reverse. I don't remember the numbers, but it was something like 14-7. So it's like, all right, hey, we're back.
Right, and they still had 9 games against the Braves, and I think 7 games against the Phillies, still on the board.
And then at the trade deadline, instead of going to get another closer or filling in your other problems, they dump.
They blew it up.
Now, I still say, even if the Verlander Scherzer moves work out, because they got elite prospects, might we have been playing, dare I say, meaningful games in September if they hold on to Pham and Canna and Robertson? I mean, even Eduardo Escobar, I was happy to see Beatty get a hit off of Milner, because last year, right after they traded Escobar, Beatty's facing every lefty and looking terrible. But I still just don't get how they blow it up based on one 23 games patch where it was the bullpen that really crushed them. I can't get over that. Maybe I should get over it. It's 2024.
No, I agree. I mean, we had that conversation also, but I think what happened was that Cone, and he said this. Listen, there's different blueprints in building your farm system, and he felt that he had these. He felt that they weren't without Diaz. I think he felt no matter who they got on the market as a closer, without a true DH, which they probably weren't going to get on the market at that point, unless they had to give up one of these assets, he felt that it would be better to start rebuilding, use the money and trade, eat some of the salary and get top level prospects and start. Because even with everything they offloaded, I mean, you take a look at what they have. I mean, the core was still there after everything they offloaded. You still had Pete, you still had Lindor, you still had McNeil, you still had the kids, which everyone was high on, but now everyone's dumping on, which we still don't know what they're going to be. You still had Nimmo, and you still had maybe the following year Marte, and you still had Alvarez. So you offloaded your pitchers, and you got big time prospects, which you totally retooled your farm system, which now can be used. Because listen, there's a huge redundancy in Vientos and Batty and Mauricio, so you're not going to keep all three. And plus the fact you got Gilbert, you got you got Jet Williams, you got Vassell, you got some pitching prospects down there. You got Prada as another catching prospect who he's going to be blocked forever. So Prada, if he has a good year, he's going to be offloaded for a pitcher. So you've now set yourself up for the free agent class who's pitchers. Listen, and Montgomery would have been nice on this team. Montgomery would have been a fit because Montgomery's young enough. You probably listen, the deal he signed, that would have been a perfect fit here. That's a mistake. I think they were waiting out the market. I think they might have got blindsided by that. I think Montgomery, if he had lasted a little longer, would have been here. And I think had this injury happened with McGill in spring training, Montgomery would have been here on opening day. That's the difference.
Revisionist history on
right.
The not blowing up the team when they did. Right. Because if you see what the Braves did and the Phillies did down the stretch, they wouldn't have caught him anyway. So in retrospect, they did the right thing.
But Steve, might they have won 84 games and made the playoffs? But I say something more bold, which is even if you knew they were going to win 84 games and not make the playoffs, or 82 games and not make the playoffs, I think keeping your culture high from the year before and having meaningful games in September and a crowded stadium excited instead of the demoralizing 2 months you went through. The Cardinals, ironically, except for last year, never seem to have those seasons. Right. We have too many of them. I'm in the by the way, I said as a carve out, you could trade Verlander and Scherzer and you would have gotten those 3 elite prospects, but held on to, I remember Dominic Leone. You could have held on to, funny enough, Dominic Leone might have been the best deal they made, but you could have held on to Robertson and Canna and Pham and not had, Rafael Ortega and those kind of guys in the lineup that were AAA guys. And sure. Maybe finish with 82 wins. Oh, we didn't make the playoffs, but like the 2005 team had 82 wins. That was a positive winning season. The 87 team had injuries and they had a disappointing year, but they bounced back.
Yeah, but you knew you were going to lose Pham. You knew you were going to lose Canna. I mean, they were free
and Escobar.
So get something, and they did very well, I think.
And
Pham obviously didn't like being here anyway. So good.
He was whatever. Listen, this was good. This is a great show tonight. We're on an hour and a half. Oh yeah, over an hour and a half. Yeah. I'm gonna put it out there. I would hope that every one of you guys are gonna be here next week. Dwight Gooden will be in the Zoom room, and I'm gonna invite some people to surprise him as well. So it should be a good show, and I'll tell you guys, and I will put it out there when I put it in the group, for us not to share that, the post in our group to any other groups, because we want to keep these Zoom rooms the way they've been. They've been really great. People have been coming on every week, and the guests and you guys and the other guys who've been coming on ask great questions, and I want to keep it that way. I don't want outsiders, because it's harder to, we've been lucky so far. This is show 29 and we only had those 2 guys, and unfortunately the guy last week, he just didn't know how to mute himself, because he sent me an email. He goes, what the hell? He goes, I got kicked out of the room and I couldn't get back in. I said, well, I asked you to mute twice, and we didn't know that you were just a normal person, because there's some crazies out there. So he said, all right, he appreciated us answering him back. So, all right, guys, let's hope that next week after this road trip, we got something good to talk about. Obviously with Dwight, we'll have great stuff to talk about.
Mark.
Of
Have a
course.
great night, and let's go Mets.
Thanks,
you.
guys. Let's go,
All
Mets.
right.
All right, let's
Good
go
night,
back.
guys. All right.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.
I just hope that they're not assuming that, well, okay, end of the year, we're just gonna outbid everybody and Pete's coming back. Because as the season goes on, he could feel not loved. We've seen that before. As long as Pete still loves New York and the fans treat him right, the problem is if they get out of it, he's gone in July. If the Mets are toast, which would be bad, unless they make a side deal. Pitching, I worry about it a little bit. It's stronger than what it was. I like that part of it though. But JD, I would have liked to have seen them get JD. I mean, I understand the other part of it, but just having a little more in that lineup that's a given, I think would have felt better.
Yeah, listen, I mean, if they went and signed him and used a platoon of Vantos and Batty at third, okay, or got one of them some at bats. Listen, I either way would have been fine. I just don't think it was a necessity, and I agree with you. The problem with Pete is you're right. Come July, but in the same respect, you didn't have that issue. Well, you did actually, because they were out of contention when Nimmo was same situation. And I think I don't know if they will trade Pete, because I think if they do have sights on him being re-signed, if they trade him, then they'll never re-sign him.
Right.
So that will be interesting. That's the headache you run. But listen, the Yankees were able to navigate it with Judge, and he went out and had his greatest year ever. So let's see what Pete does.
Yeah.
Stevie, any thoughts before we go?
The lineup, you look at 2022 versus 2023, obviously there were the rule changes, but I mean, overall, 2023 was just a down year for most of the guys in that lineup. So to me, law of averages tells you that it's got to be better this year just based on that. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's another thing, and I did bring this up a number of times to the guys, and I didn't expect them to say any different, but I think having Eric Chavez back as the hitting coach cannot be, overlooked. I did ask that last year, like the adjustment to a new hitting coach. Yeah, and they both said, well, they're both on the same page, they're both the same staff, but I think Xavi has a great relationship with these players. That's one of the reasons why I was a big champion for him to be maybe the manager. I'm glad he's still on staff. I think that's going to be a big difference. You're right. Pete's not going to hit 220. McNeil's not going to hit 45 points below his, career average. Marte is going to be in there full time. Lindor is going to be Lindor. I agree with you. And a full season of Alvarez, you're going to get a lot of home runs out of him. You're probably not going to get average, but listen, third base was just between, at the beginning of the year with Escobar just having his struggles. But then again, you did get big numbers out of Tommy Pham, who's still a free agent, right? I don't think anyone signed him this week, did they? Yeah, it's unbelievable. But that just also shows you what type of guy he is in the clubhouse.
That's like Dodgers screwed up everybody by creating a market that was so artificial. Really, that contract should not have been allowed. It's just ridiculous. 68 million a year after 10. Where are the Dodgers going to be then? Who's going to own them?
Right, because now nobody wants to give Snell or Montgomery those ridiculous.
Well, they think that, well, I deserve that.
Right.
Their sides are off the chart.
And you know what? We've seen it. You can pay everyone everything. It doesn't guarantee wins. We know that firsthand. So it's gonna that's why baseball is great. You never know. But what you said, Steve, is when you said law of averages, to me, the law of averages has to eventually come, it's got to catch up with the Braves and the Phillies at some point. At some point, guys on their team are going to have down years, but it just has to. So this could be the year. I'm not delusional. I don't think we're winning the division, but I think we'll contend for a wild card. I really do. I think we'll be there. I think we'll be competitive. I think there'll be fun baseball. And, sometimes with lower expectations, it's more fun if they exceed those expectations. So I know I'm always the optimist, but you got to love baseball. This is why we do it, right? This is right, guys. Next Wednesday, season preview show. Have a
All right.
great night, guys.
Take
Thanks.
care. Good to see you.
Bye bye.
Good to see
You
you.
got it. Bye.
Bye.